This is the eLearning Podcast, episode number 66.
A lot of the customers or the students were new to this whole online education style type of a thing. And so kind of training them up on how to kind of move their way and progress through the course. And then also how to communicate and interact and participate with their classmates because, they're probably used to more of like a traditional see you in person type of a setting.
Welcome to the eLearning Podcast. My name's Laddick, and I'm your host from lmspulse.com. My guest for today is Ryan Rasar, an architect turned teacher and educational entrepreneur based out of Las Vegas. Passionate about technology and science, Ryan founded Stem Qwest, which is Quest with Q W EST, to deliver high-quality courses on topics about science, technology, engineering, and math. In this very entrepreneurial conversation, Ryan and I talk about the process of moving away from architecture and into teaching, then into educational IT, and then jumping deep into e-learning entrepreneurship with Stem Qwest. We also talk about the wins and woes of technology in the classroom and the surprising ways in which young learners are totally tech savvy at one turn and then complete luddites at the other, and then how Ryan deals with it all. Related to this, we also talk about how teachers approach entrepreneurship differently. Now, spoiler alert, it's all about finding the joy of learning and then making it contagious. We also talk about Ryan's experience with virtual charter schools and how their use of technology allowed him to reach several times more students than he'd expect, and only in a matter of days. And then finally, we cover Ryan's favorite tools, including Canvas and whether or not Outschool will become the next Amazon of e-learning. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the eLearning Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing swell. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
The pleasure is all mine. I am sitting here in Mexico City specifically, as everyone knows. Where do we find you sitting today? And I assume it's not Jupiter.
It is not. I currently am residing in the Las Vegas, Nevada area.
Oh, that's right.
Of the
Las
United
Vegas.
States of America.
Las Vegas. Fantastic. Ryan, I just want to think about Las Vegas for a second because, it's been a long time since I've been to Vegas, but, I've teed you up in the beginning, about what we've talked about, kind of giving a little background on you, but why don't you give us the 15, 20 seconds of who Ryan is and kind of what we're sitting here today for?
Yeah, sure. So, I have had an education company for the last 4 or 5 years, but before that, I've been an actual educator in the public education space for about the last 11 or so. And then before that, I actually did not want to be a teacher when I grew up. I wanted to be an architect. So I actually went to school for architecture and site planning and was doing that for a number of years after I, went through school and got out of school. And then I had a little bit of a earlier in my career change than I would have expected because from some things that were maybe out of my control and transitioned into education. And so now e-learning is what I do all day, every day.
Sweet. And before I start asking all these cool questions about this journey about Stem Qwest, which is the company that you run now, I've been using the podcast as a small time capsule for the COVID situation. And over the last 18 months now, what are things like in Las Vegas, Nevada right now?
Things are pseudo normal, except for like the masking thing. Like you have to, have a mask when you go into the restaurant, but then you can take it off as soon as you sit down, or if they give you a water or whatever the different rule is when you go. I mean, we stay pretty close to home for the most part anyways. I was already working from home before this whole thing started. So is my wife mostly. My son is back in public school and they were, of course, all online up until the very end of last year. They tried this transition to part-time in-person learning, which was odd. And so we just stayed with the home route for that. But that's all kind of settled itself out. We haven't had any issues with that. They just wear masks when they go to school, and we, take them to school and pick them up, and get the occasional email that there was a COVID case in the school, but it hasn't been in close enough proximity to warrant him having to stay home. So, as you drive around and go through day to day, it's close to normal-ish, I guess, as close to normal-ish as we can get 18 months into this whole thing.
Love it. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, what I think, so everybody in the audience right now, there's a large portion of them are educators like yourself, as you found yourself. And many of them either transition into education, or, they are professors. This is where they've always wanted to be, or, whatever. But you've achieved something that I would suspect a very large portion of them would like to achieve, but either haven't taken the leap or haven't had, the circumstances force them to take the leap, et cetera, which is putting your courses online, putting yourself out there, actually having people sign up, delivering that stuff. And now you're saying, I think you're in year 5 now, almost year 6. You said you started this in 2015, right?
Started 2016. Actually, things kind of got rolling, I guess, more towards early 2017. And so now we're almost 5, kind of going strong with it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
but going from 0 to now has been quite the journey.
Yeah. So take me back to the beginning. Like, what was the impetus in 2015/16 for you to say, hey, I'm going to put some stuff online and see what happens?
Yeah. Okay. That's good story, I guess, or maybe not. I don't know. I was literally like on my couch in my condo, and I was like, I wouldn't mind putting something out there online that is, interesting, that other people could use and bring in some extra cash flow to do some fun things that I had kind of on the list, and I was working full time as a classroom school teacher at the time. So it wasn't like I was, raking in like the big bucks.
Were you also teaching STEM stuff in the public system, or were you?
Yeah. So I was when I transitioned from being an architect to a teacher, so I guess we can go way back, like 2007-8, the foreclosure crisis and all that kind of stuff, and people stopped. So my profession got hammered because I was in the building industry, and obviously there's no loans, no money, no building, so that just dried up. So my wife was already a classroom school teacher, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. So I did what most people would do when their industry goes kaput. I went back to my roots of bartending and waiting tables, and got a night job and went back to school. So I went back to school, got my teaching credentials, and then that was interesting. I was, bartending at night till the wee hours of the morning, and then I'd get up super early, and I was an ed assistant in an elementary school. So while I was finishing up my teaching credential. So it was kind of a crazy time, but fast forward to that, when I got my teaching credential, I actually wanted to teach science. I always loved science when I was a student. And if I wasn't going to be an architect, scientist is probably up there somewhere towards the top of the list. So I actually wanted to teach middle school science. So as soon as I got my teaching credential all finished up, I moved out of the ed assistant in the elementary school position to a full-time. I was actually teaching computer technology in my first year and coaching tennis, which I didn't really play tennis very much, but I was the one that was willing to get up at wee hours of the morning and go to the tennis courts first period and teach 7th grade kids how to swing a racket. And so my science teaching and also teaching computer technology classes kind of lended itself towards this online adventure, which was, all right, I'm a pretty decent teacher. Kids seem to like what I do. How can I clone myself so that I can teach more than just, the 30 kids that are in my classroom on any given day? And so at the same time, we were actually homeschooling my son, and he was taking online classes, and there was not a lot of things that were geared towards his age group and that kind of 9 to 10-year-old age group. And as we were looking for classes for him to participate in, so many of them were either above his head or like in a solo learning environment where it was just him going through like an online
course kind of thing where it's like click.
Yeah. And like he would show us, he'd like, hey mom, dad, look at this cool thing I did. And so I was like, okay, how can we make this so that it's, he can participate in something that's interesting to him, a lot of the STEM theme type topics. And so we stumbled upon some different online platforms. And there was one in particular, which was Outschool, which was just kind of in its fledgling days in 2016. And he'd taken a couple classes for some other teachers there. And I said, hey, I can start putting together some courses and put them up on this Outschool thing and see if it flies. So I took a 3D game design course that teaches some kind of simple computer programming techniques and has kids building and making their own online video games. And I wrapped that up into a series of videos and PDFs and tutorials and guided notes and instruction. And I put that into Canvas LMS, which I was getting more familiar with. And so I had students registering, getting into they've since reworked the Outschool platform a little bit now, but that's really where it started. I took a class I was already teaching to my kids of, 30 group of 30 students, and said, this is good stuff. How can I get this to more eyes and ears? And the internet was the way to do that. So
did you start with one course, a suite of courses? Was it just like, hey, here's one class?
Yeah. So I started with one. I think that's a good place for anyone that's looking to get into this type of thing, is just start with one. You learn so much as you're building it, putting it together and tweaking and changing. And so I just started with the one that I already had kind of the basics for. About that same time, actually, 2015, 16, I'd actually transitioned out of a brick and mortar school and was working for an online charter school. And so I had to take a lot of my brick and mortar type lessons and transition them to this new online environment. And one of the best ways to do that was through, screen capture and video recording and, posting things to, Vimeo or YouTube links, and then sharing that out with your classes. So I had to kind of do a lot of that work anyways for my classrooms that I was working with. So I started to build up this library of, lessons and resources. And so it was fairly easy at that point, or a lot easier, because I was already kind of doing the groundwork in order to get it into an online course format.
What would you say, when you first put that first course online? I guess you had the advantage of transitioning into the charter school, so you also had a sandbox, that forced you to think about, how do I deliver online? But I guess the question I want to ask is, what were the main challenges? Was it figuring out how to do videos? Was it suddenly finding yourself being an online personality? Was it, learning objectives? Like what were the big, leaps in order to get something online?
I don't know, honestly, all that part came fairly naturally to me. I don't think there was really too many hiccups with that. I think maybe the biggest thing was just a lot of the customers or the students were new to this whole online education style type of a thing. And so kind of training them up on how to kind of move their way and progress through the course, and then also how to communicate and interact and participate with their classmates, because they're probably used to more of a traditional see you in person type of a setting. So now you've got the emails and the questions of how do I, where do I, what do I do? So I started kind of making basically a template of a FAQ, so I could kind of copy paste responses, because by the second or third time you get the same question of how do I, then you're like, okay, I'm tired of typing this. There's got to be an easier way. So, I just kind of started building my own list of FAQs, and then, then it became a 10-second response as opposed to a 5-minute response. So just kind of, I think that would probably be the biggest thing, is making sure that you're able to reach an audience that's not necessarily as familiar with that learning. So obviously in the last 18 months, more people have become a lot more familiar with it, but that was probably one of my bigger challenges, I guess, getting started.
And I heard you say the term Canvas, which is a large learning management system that many, many people are familiar with if you're in college right now or in any learning environment. Are you still on Canvas, or how has that, your delivery platform, how has that evolved over the last 4 years?
Sure. So I am still on Canvas. I actually use Canvas every day for my public charter school that I work with. All of our classes and stuff are all in Canvas. So I use that every day there. In terms of my online course content delivery, I still do have some. Not every course that's in my library is now in Canvas. The biggest easiest way, biggest way that I was able to get students over the last number of years was through the Outschool marketplace, was posting my courses on Outschool. If you're not familiar, we can go talk about that a little bit more. But there was a number of other after school programs and charter schools and things that had found me like through my website or through conferences and through some different events and things that I'd gone to. And the state of California actually had a pretty robust program for a few years where online public charter school kids were able to get their state funding in order to purchase courses for their own use. So I was working with about a dozen different charter schools in California, and each of them had their own like invoicing and payment system and, you know, way that they would direct students towards you. And then I would send them out like the Canvas code to join the course. And so that's how they were able to get into I use the Canvas content format for those courses a lot, but it's the tediosity of it. I don't know if that's a word.
Tediosity, yeah. Sure.
The tediousness of like, okay, so we're going to invoice you for like this student. Now, okay, send us a purchase order. Now send us a bill. Now send us a payment in the mail. Like that just became more of a headache that I really wanted to deal with. And that's about the time that the Outschool courses really started to gain a lot of traction. So eventually those online courses to the charter schools were taking too much time and effort for fairly small return, and started just focusing more on the Outschool. And now actually a lot of the California charter schools and other organizations that were doing their own invoicing and POs and all that, now they've gotten onto the online marketplace, so they have their students signing up directly through there. So, things have transitioned pretty quickly to, it's like the Amazon of online courses.
That's what I was saying. I wanted, like, a critical question for everyone is, I have my expertise. I've written my book, or I've been teaching my course for a long time, or, I have my certificate program or my diploma program that I've been doing forever. Getting it online, okay, there is a transition period because you've got to break it down into steps, and you've got to, figure out how you're going to deliver and create engagement, those kinds of things. But the big question is how do you get the first student to sign up and actually, either give you your credit card or whatever? And so you chose Outschool. Tell me about the thought process behind that and where that stands today. And why don't you give us a little bit more on Outschool anyway, like a little bit deeper? Because is it just like Teachable? Is it just like Thinkific, or like what is it?
Not exactly, but kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So the Outschool platform itself, like I said, I call it, it's like the Amazon of online courses for kids. They've got everything from your basic fundamentals of your course subjects, English, math, sciences. They've got like STEM themed courses like I run, but then they've also got, dance or basket weaving, or, how to play the drums. Like they've got all these other topics that you can't get probably in like your home learning environment. Like if you want to learn to play the ukulele, you're probably not going to be able to go down to your local middle school and say, hey, where's the ukulele teacher at? But if that's something you're into, then this gives you a way that you can find an expert in that area, and with a few clicks, and choose your session start date and purchase the course, and away you go.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool part about it was the fact that you're actually in a class. They have live talk classes, and they also have flexible formats and clubs that are kind of asynchronous as opposed to like the live taught instruction, but they've got options for that too. Like if you want live taught instruction, you can get up a teacher that does that. If you want that more asynchronous route, there's courses that are built around that model. I've had students from well over 60 countries now. I've lost count, because you've got kids joining from all over the place, which is
super cool.
Really cool, super cool.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like the getting that course out there, they handled a lot of like the marketing part of it. Like they had a big, as soon as you would search for a course, or maybe they found it through some sort of a homeschool network or something. And so they've got, that plugs you into like their system. And then from there, they were running the Facebook ads. They were actually doing all the marketing, they charge a percentage. So they were actually kind of driving the customers to my courses. And it was a way smaller back then. I mean, they've got tens of thousands of teachers now probably, and I was probably back when they had hundreds. So there wasn't as many courses to choose from type of an idea. I had kind of a niche topic, like this whole game design component. I'm teaching your 9-year-old how to make video games. There wasn't probably, now there's dozens of people that teach a similar topic, but back then I was kind of like the only show in town.
Isn't it crazy? Just like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, like you were the only show in town, and It's great. Yeah. The growth of this industry is pretty intense.
Yeah. And that's brought with it its own, challenges. Last year when COVID hit, obviously things kind of went nuts with online courses, and a lot of people caught on to it, or they were forced into it. They're like, hey, my restaurant isn't open. Well, I need to make some money. What's the thing that I do? I teach yoga on the weekends. Well, now I'm going to start putting my yoga content online. And, that became their full-time focus. So, yeah.
In the OutSchool platform, as the Amazon, the Amazon of education, one of the interesting things for, let's just say, product sellers in Amazon is the race to the bottom, right? How, essentially you can be outcompeted. Is that a word? Like, am I?
Yeah,
my English is failing me here.
Outcompeted goes right next to tediosity.
Tediosity, yeah, exactly. So, but it's the race to the bottom of, hey, I can sell that T-shirt for $2 if you can sell it for $3, and I, then somebody else comes and sells it for $1.50. What is that like? And then sort of the second part to that question is, I've heard from many people who have put courses on like Coursera or Udemy or something like that, where they spend a lot of time and effort putting a course together, and then they find a copycat comes in and basically just takes the course and then replicates it, and does something like that. What do you do about those two problems?
Yeah, there's been some of that. Like for one, they do have like a reporting system. Like if you look up and you say, wow, this course sounds an awful lot like my course description, you can send a nice little note to customer service and say, hey, can you look at this course? Because it sure looks an awful lot like mine.
Okay.
And then, they pull it down. Or they make the author of that course revise it to make it so that it's not exactly the same. But you do kind of have to, be on the lookout for it. If you're not actively looking for it, then yeah, it could probably go unnoticed, because there's, a lot of course creators and educators on that platform. So that's the one thing is, yeah, I mean, inevitably you're going to have people that try to go out and, hey, this seems to be working for them. Let me try and
it's not unique
tangent off of it. Yeah.
It's not unique to the online world, right? I mean,
right.
This happens on the corner shop. This happens at supermarkets, whatever, right? Same thing.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, it's inevitable, but it is what it is. The other thing, I mean, like you'd mentioned, this market is growing so quickly that there's just a lot of traffic on the platform. So the way that you combat that, I guess, is still just providing a good service or providing something that's a little bit different than the next guy. So, if I've got a dozen different courses, if I find a student or a family of students or, that like my teaching style, then they say, oh, that course was super. What else does he have?
Right.
What else does Stem Qwest offer? And then I've got, game design level 1, game design level 2, architecture around the world, architecture history. Like there's different, if they find a niche that they're interested in, I try to give them more options so they can, be a repeat offender and keep coming back and, purchasing classes from me. But I'm sure other people on the platform have got their own students that they are, those students jive with them better. And so they, might go to them and take a series of courses. And it's kind of like, the pond's getting pretty big. So there's a lot of fish in there now, and people, different strokes for different folks. Some people take my course and like, wow, this was awesome. When can I take the next one? And other people were like, I tried and I lost steam a few weeks into it and didn't really, thanks, but we're probably going to find somebody else for the next course. That's totally fine too. So there is kind of lately within the last couple of months, I mean, obviously last year was insane with, I'd put up a course and it would fill up. And the next day you post another course, it fills up.
Wow.
Because it was, I mean, things are just going berserk. So obviously the volume has really slowed down. But there is a lot more competition. So you do have to, provide a good service to the point that people want to keep coming back, or if they don't come back, they at least share it with someone else and give them a good experience so that you don't have to race them to the bottom. Like I recently, for the very, very first time, I actually ran any sort of a sale, promotion, discount, anything was like about a week ago.
Oh,
like,
wow.
That's the first time in 5 years that I'd ever offered anything in a discount. And I was just like, let me try it and see what kind of a response I get just out of curiosity. And it was received really well. So I don't know if it's just that I, hadn't popped up in their inbox lately, or maybe they just saw the discount and were like, oh, that sparked a bell that, we took this class previously from this company, and they've got this other course that we haven't tried, and if I can grab it for 20% off, then maybe it's worth it. So, I mean, it's not. I don't think that that's sustainable. Like, I wouldn't want to offer our content at a discount 365, but it is a good way to draw in some repeat customers, or maybe they share it with someone else. It's a family or a friend, and they get into the system. They take one class the first time and they find they like it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next, year or moving forward. So
if you're willing to share, what kind of price points are we talking about here? I mean, how much do your courses cost? And
yep,
let's start there. Like, what are your price points?
Yeah, so it's about $70 for a 6-week course typically. Now, a 6-week course in and of itself is about 4 to 6 hours of work per week. So it's probably
for you or for the learner?
For the learner.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there's different, like I said, there's video lessons, there's tutorials. If they're in the game design class, they've actually got to go into the software and start building and tweaking and troubleshooting and creating their game. So it's kind of a rule of thumb is like the $10 to $12 per week type of an idea. But within my courses, I try to make sure you're not spending $10 or $12 per week for just an hour. You're going to get, a good solid, 4, 5, 6 hours. And then if they want to, take it to the nth degree, and if a kid works on it for 8 or 10 hours a week, they've got that ability to do that. So yeah, 6-week courses is about $70. I've got some 9-10 week courses that are like 100, 120. And then I've got some shorter 4-week courses that are typically in like the $40, $50 range, kind of an idea.
And how does that play out in terms of your actual take when you're going through the Outschool platform or selling yourself individually, those kinds of things?
Yeah. So in terms of their percentage.
Yeah. Do they? I'm assuming they're taking a fee for some.
Yes, absolutely. And they're totally just in their fee. Honestly, the Outschool fee, it started a lot lower, but then I think they quickly caught on that this isn't sustainable. So they bumped it up, and now it's at 30%, which I think is about where Amazon or whatever lies. But with that, I feel like you used to get a little bit more for it because there wasn't so many people on the platform. Like I would hop onto, I'm not really on Facebook. I have 0 friends. I'm in some groups, but I don't have any friends. But my wife would be scrolling through. She's like, hey, here's your course. It popped up on her little feed as like an ad. And now that doesn't happen nearly as often just because they've got so many more that they're running. But for that, they provide the platform. It's kind of an LMS now that wasn't there before. It used to be just like a place to post and share your Canvas link. And now it's actually a little bit more like an online classroom. It still lacks a lot of the features, but they provide that you get a free Zoom account if you teach live classes. You have a message system so that you can contact your learners and your parents. And so it's the 30% is definitely reasonable, I feel.
Okay. Have you considered, I guess I'm trying to put the puzzle pieces together because you're doing the charter school stuff as well.
Yeah.
And so that's one ecosystem. Then you have the Outschool for the other ecosystem. Have you also put it in sort of a standalone platform that you've built where you've got the whole, payment gateway and all that stuff as well, or you haven't gone down that path?
I did have. So actually, if you go to my website now, it's a little bit unmaintained over the last year or so, just because I've had so much traffic coming in from like Outschool and things like that. So it's been a little neglected. I actually took down my my shopping cart. So like I used to be able to go to my website and find the course you wanted and choose a date, put it in your shopping cart, and then I'd send you the Canvas link, and then off to the races your student goes. But that just, again, got too much to manage when I could, within a few clicks, you could put up a course on Outschool, and within a day you could get, 8 or 10 learners at, $50 a pop, and,
right.
Off you go. It wasn't worth like me maintaining the shopping cart because it was just too much time. But now that's actually my like kind of 2022 focus, because gosh, I look at it's 2021's almost gone, but is to actually bring that back and do some more institutional scale, I guess, marketing, and really seeing about getting my content within like after school programs or community organizations or even schools, like site licenses, where they would be able to offer it to their population,
so more of a bit like a B2B push kind
Correct.
of, where you're going into a school system or a company system or whatever you
Yep. Right. Which has been I've worked in a lot of schools, but, I've never actually tried to sell anything to a school. I've written, seen a lot of, curriculums and programs and things that come through the door. And so I'm like, I think I could make my stuff beneficial to, if I've had thousands of learners independently, there's no reason why we couldn't have thousands of learners that are participating in a blended or a hybrid environment, like from their school. I think that's one thing with the pandemic and online learning, is that a lot of traditional brick and mortar type schools have now had to learn more about this whole idea of hybrid or blended learning. And, if you're rural school and somewhere USA, and you don't have a STEM teacher, or you don't have a person on your campus that knows how to, program video games, and your students are wanting to learn that, then my courses can offer that. Or there's different, obviously, there's lots of places where they could go to now, but just as an example, the world's getting a little bigger and a little smaller at the same time. Like within a few clicks, you can find an expert pretty quickly. So if you don't have a ukulele teacher on your campus, then you've got kids that want to learn it.
There certainly is one. If you're in Poughkeepsie and you suddenly have a ukulele demand,
yeah, exactly,
you can find an instructor.
Yep, you've got a computer.
This takes me, it sort of circles back to one of the, foundational reasons why you started this quest.
Yeah. See, get it? Now there you go.
Was the carbon copy yourself? To be able to scale your delivery of this instructional material. And so, leaving the B2B, future push aside, how much of that has really come into fruition? Because I'm getting the sense that you're still really hands-on with course delivery, course creation, interacting with students and stuff like that. Like, where is your time spent in your business? And, in terms of the actual content versus teaching versus administration, and what's your plan for scale?
Yes, very good. So the replication of myself in terms of the content was probably the easy part. It was the most time intensive at the beginning, because you had to go in and actually, create the guides, the tutorials, the PDFs, screen capture and record the lessons, that type of a thing. But once that's done, now that it hasn't, I haven't really had to touch it too much. The more day-to-day focus of kind of the running of Stem Qwest and the courses and servicing the students was actually the interaction within the courses, because they're actually, they're viewing the content and they're, building their games or making their architecture models and whatnot, but then they're actually uploading and posting and putting it into this online classroom. And that still needs to be looked at and tended to and commented on, and you need to kind of moderate those classrooms. So that's where the majority of the manpower is now, is just, operating and running the classes. Posting the classes just takes a few clicks. That system's become better and is a lot more automated, but the actual interaction with the learners of, hey, I made this cool thing. I'm 9 years old in Poughkeepsie or wherever, and I want my teacher to look at it and tell me what they think. So that's the part that, I spend the most time with. Now, when it did, things were berserk last year, I actually brought in some additional manpower, and there was up to 5 of us working on running and operating and maintaining all those classes. Because when the emails come in and they say, I can't, I'm new to this, where do I go? I don't understand, then you got to go to the FAQ, and, but I would, somebody else can look at the FAQ and copy and paste the response to those type of questions. But, going into the actual classes and moderating, it's not like a chat, but it's kind of like a message board, to be able to make sure that everybody's getting attention and feedback. That's the biggest part of the ongoing hourly output right now.
Do you have a vision as a part of that 2022 plan to, you said you can outsource some of it and whatnot, but is there even the desire, right? Maybe you're in your happy place now where, and I think that sometimes we, the seduction of, hey, I'm going to go scale this and outsource myself, and I'm just going to be kind of running the business and, turn this into a 7-8 figure company. Not everybody wants that, right? Not everybody's looking for that. What's your stance on that? Like, is that where you'd love to see this head, or something else?
I think it's somewhere between me doing, most of the work and seven figures is probably too big. Like, I don't think I want to do that. Like I mean, that's, probably not really the direction I want to go. I like being involved, and I like being able to, kind of see things boots on the ground perspective. I don't want to be the puppeteer that just like directs traffic. I'm more of a worker, like
that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
I like to dispel the entrepreneurial myth, right? I think for some people that is, the startup culture, I guess, really where it is. You see these big sums coming out of Silicon Valley and whatnot. And being an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go have the huge win and those kinds of things. And I think that that's where we see most entrepreneurs at the end of the day. So,
yeah, I think ideally kind of the long range, like 5-year plan would be, to build it up to the point that if I wanted to sell it, that I could, but that I wouldn't have to, or maybe I even retain a piece of it and still kind of keep my spoon in the pot type of an idea. It's my baby. I've had kind of grown it up from nothing. So I'm comfortable with where things are. Actually, the fact that things have slowed down over the last couple of months has been kind of refreshing, because it was just so nuts for a while there. Learned a lot in a real short period of time. And I don't know that it was pretty stressful. Like, I don't know that I want to go back to that really. Like, it was good for like a short-term sprint, but I don't know that I want to run that sprint at that speed for that long. Like, that was a little stressful. So,
Sure.
If I can,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I can have, X number of schools that are using my program, and then still keep my courses on Outschool, where I can have the, individual learners from Timbuktu and Ireland and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand, and all them can participate. I think that would be pretty cool.
How much would your courses change, or the reach change if you like delivered them in Spanish as well? Do you think that it would be like?
Yeah, I've actually, so when I talk about like the number of countries and things, like over 60 countries, I lost count, but all of the content's delivered in English. Now, I did to get typically would be either English as like a second language learners, or they are English speaking students that are living abroad. There's a lot of that. There is, within, I kind of keep coming back, like the game design software, it does have the ability to translate between about 8 or 9 different languages. So they can actually go into the settings and they can change it, and all of a sudden all the code block information changes from English to Spanish. So the trick is, though, once you're in it, now you got to figure out how to get back out of it in case you're back from French to English or what have you. But yeah, I mean, I haven't ran the numbers, but I think that obviously English isn't the only language spoken, and Spanish is probably somewhere up there towards the top. So probably wouldn't take too much effort to have the content translated over. If that would maybe be another possibility.
Yeah, just kind of wondering if you had thought about that. It's an interesting.
That's something I'd hire that out. I wouldn't be doing that myself, but yeah, that's like that 90% thing. Is like, okay, yeah, this is the content. Like,
well, then once you deliver in Spanish as well, right? The content, then all of the commenting.
I tried Spanish in high school, and that didn't go so well. My Spanish teacher was also the soccer coach, and we watched a lot of soap operas. Like, we didn't really do a whole lot of conjugating verbs. So my Spanish is no muy bien.
I love it. Tell me, how has the learner changed and the parent changed? I mean, you're delivering for that middle school area, so maybe like primary to middle school area. That's your sweet spot. So parents are definitely still involved. These aren't, adult self-directed learners. How have they changed over the last 2 years?
Yes, that's a very good question. And I think that not only has the parent, or not only has the learner changed, but the parent has changed too. And I think that there was a lot of them that got thrown into, all right, school's closed. Good luck, mom and dad. Here's your kid back. Hopefully they learned something. And so there was a lot of change that happened on the parental front too. And I think that helped everybody, because now I don't get as many questions of, how do I
How do I turn on the iPad? How do
how
I
do
like find the
yeah,
settings?
how do I take a screenshot? How do I
Right.
attach an image? Like, how
Mm.
do I upload a video file? Whether through osmosis or they did it once from somebody else and now they come to me already knowing that knowledge, I'm not sure, but they picked that up somewhere. It's kind of like the soft skills of being an online learner.
Mm.
Um, it's like when you send me a message, like if you want the response, you have to actually open the reply. Like it doesn't come to your brain.
Yeah.
So there's been less actually of like the tech trouble. Because like I said, whether it's from participating in my course, and actually I really feel like that's another like service that we were providing a couple years ago, not so much now, is this is how you do a screenshot. This is how you attach an image. This is how you reply in a nice tone of voice without sounding condescending towards other peers,
Mm.
so there's kind of there's people's, I get the soft skills of e-learning have really ramped up in a pretty short period of time. And I think that it's the parents maybe that are our age or around there that have these kind of late elementary to middle school students. We came around at about the time when, computers were starting to become necessary. And so they have a lot of the skills from a professional point of view, but maybe they didn't do online schooling as a student. And so there's a little bit of, learning process for the parent too. But as the years go by and the parents get younger, I guess, the parents the parents have later and later birthdays. They've had a little bit more exposure. A lot of them got thrown probably or pulled from the office and put in front of a Zoom screen. And so they kind of had to figure it out. So that's actually been a benefit I've seen over the last, year and a half, is that the tech skills are they're not innate. Like there's a lot of people that still need to learn them. I got an email just this last week from a learner parent that, hey, I thought my kid would be able to do this on their own. And it was more involvement on my side than I was expecting. Not necessarily a bad thing, but they were just sharing that, and I don't know their student, I don't know what their exposure was. Maybe this is the first time they've ever had to do anything that wasn't paper and pencil. So it could have been a steeper learning curve for them. But then I get a lot of emails that are like, wow, this was super. I could just, log my kid in and off they went. And they came back to me at the end of the day or the week and said, look what I did. And that's super. Cool. So you get a little bit of all of it.
Yeah. And I'm the satisfaction that you must have felt over the last 4 or 5 years of everyone who's completed the course. And then, I'm sure that there's been a ton of positive feedback. Otherwise you wouldn't still be in this business. So
yeah. More good than bad, which is always good. Like I said, providing a good service, providing a good service, I think is paramount. Like that's kind of what keeps the doors open. And you go to a restaurant, you don't like the service, maybe you go back once, and if you get bad service again, you're definitely not going back a third time. So you got to try and provide them with a good experience.
Awesome. Final question for you. It's one I ask everybody at the end of these interviews is, what are you excited about, over the next 6 months to 12 months, near-term future in the e-learning universe? And it could be something you're developing. It could be a shiny new object. It could be a process. It could be, a new thing that is completely unrelated that you're like, you got to go check these guys out. What's on your mind?
Kind of on the big picture side of things, I guess, is just how over the last 18 months, 2 years-ish, how many people have been introduced to the e-learning mode that were never going to experience it otherwise. So, I made the conscious choice, me and my wife, when my son was back in 13, 14, somewhere, he was about like 3rd, 4th grade, to have him, go down the e-learning route full time for his schooling. And he's since transitioned back into a brick and mortar school. But with all of the changes that have come about recently, there's been so many more people that are now see e-learning and online school for students of various ages as an option that maybe didn't expect that to be the case before. And it's maybe not the best situation or best learning environment. I'm sure you hear horror stories of, oh God, COVID e-learning in my school was horrid. And good thing that's over and never have to do that again. But then there's other people that had really good experiences, and they're like, hey, maybe if I want to, live in a certain place, state, country, but still be able to participate in school in the United States, that's an option. Or I can go to online school and, be able to vacation and visit and go places and do things that I maybe would have been tied down to a brick and mortar school otherwise. So that's kind of a big thing that I'm actually kind of excited for, is that so many people were able to. I've seen the benefits in my own family and all of the students, the thousands of kids that I've had great learning experiences. So I think that it's awesome that people's eyes have been kind of opened up to that. But in terms of like immediate changes or other things that I see on the horizon, is just that now people understand more so than they did before, that expertise is like so much more accessible than maybe you thought it was before. And so learning is going to, I see it as becoming a lot more personalized within the next, 6, 8, 12, 2, 3, 4 years, where people are going to say, you know what, I'm not only stuck learning, math from this one person. There's other people that are out there. So I think that it'll become more choice, more options, and more parents, families, students, educators like myself are going to be able to reach a lot broader audience than they've ever been able to before. So
super cool. Ryan, this has been a fantastic conversation. I have loved learning about Stem Qwest and how you made the leap, and also, grown this thing and where you're at today. I'm looking forward to following up with you and just seeing where you can continue to grow.
Yeah.
But thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to speak with us today.
Cool. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on eLearning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the eLearning Success Summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to eLearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about eLearning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.